On this Tuesday night, Gaza's deepening humanitarian crisis. The pressure piling on Israel to end its military offensive as millions of Palestinians starve.
There are babies who are in urgent life-saving need of these supplements.
Inflation slides down. What's behind it and the potential impact on interest rates? The problems enveloping Canada Post as it faces another potential strike.
It's lost $3 billion in the last 4 to 5 years.
What it may need to do to survive. And everybody knew his name. No! The tributes pouring in for Cheers star George Wendt.
Global National with Donna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. The pressure is mounting on Israel's government. Its allies, including Canada, are using their harshest language yet, demanding an end to Israel's escalating military campaign in Gaza. In a joint statement, Britain, France and Canada say they will not stand by while the Netanyahu government pursues these egregious actions. And Nobel laureate Malala Yousafzai posted this today. It makes me sick to my stomach to see Israel's cruelty and brutality in Gaza. Our collective humanity calls for global and immediate action. I call on every world leader to put maximum pressure on the Israeli government to end this genocide and protect civilians. Israel's prime minister remains defiant, Benjamin Netanyahu vowing he will take control of all of Gaza. His critics say it's no longer a war on Hamas, but an unbridled attack on civilians. A former Israeli general and current opposition politician said today Israel is becoming a pariah state. A sane country does not wage war against civilians, does not kill babies as a pastime, and does not engage in mass population displacement. More than 50,000 people have been killed in Gaza. Our coverage begins with Jackson Proskow on what life is like there now.
Desperation has engulfed Gaza, with long lines for increasingly scarce food. Our children are dying slowly, says this father. Israel's 11-week humanitarian blockade is slowly ending, with the first aid trucks allowed in after immense international pressure. It's a drop in the ocean, according to the UN, which says it has permission for about 100 more trucks that need to be offloaded and reloaded before the aid can be distributed.
We know for a fact that there are babies who are in urgent life-saving need of these supplements.
UNICEF warns the entire Gaza Strip is at risk of famine. Severely malnourished, 12-year-old Rahaf Ayad was airlifted to Abu Dhabi after the family's pleas on social media. Most cannot escape. We were dying there in Gaza, dying of hunger, dying of fear, says her mother. It seems few places are safe. Israeli airstrikes killed at least 50 Palestinians, according to local officials, adding to the grim total of more than 500 reported fatalities in the last 8 days, as the Israeli army prepares to capture more of Gaza. We will clear and destroy the terrorist infrastructure until its defeat, said a spokesperson. There are reports the Trump administration is considering a plan to permanently relocate up to 1 million Palestinians to Libya. Under questioning, the U.S. Secretary of State issued a firm denial.
We've asked countries preliminarily whether they would be open to accepting people, not as a permanent situation, but as a bridge towards reconstruction.
Relentless bombardment and unending hunger may leave the people of Gaza no choice but to look to flee, as Israel prepares for what it promises will be an unprecedented attack. Jackson Proskow, Global News, Washington.
Western leaders have backed Israel's right to self-defense after the October 7th attacks by Hamas. But what's happening now is perceived to go well beyond that. The UK, France and Canada have lost patience and are promising concrete action if Israel doesn't stop. Taria Israel looks at what that might mean.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
An unprecedented wave of Western criticism.
I want to put on record today that we're horrified by the escalation from Israel.
The UK has suspended trade talks with Israel, summoned its ambassador, and unveiled more sanctions, going the furthest of 3 countries, including Canada, which issued a rare rebuke, condemning Israel's military operation in Gaza as wholly disproportionate.
I think it was an important turning point.
The leaders issued a joint statement saying they support Israel's right to defend itself against terrorism, but that we will not stand by while the Netanyahu government pursues these egregious actions. If Israel does not cease the renewed military offensive and lift its restrictions on humanitarian aid, we will take further concrete actions in response.
The plan for the cabinet.
Canada's Prime Minister did not elaborate on what actions he's willing to take. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu criticized the three countries on social media, posting that the leaders in London, Ottawa, and Paris are offering a huge prize to Hamas for the genocidal attack on Israel on October 7th, while inviting more such atrocities. Hamas, which Canada recognizes as a terrorist organization, welcomed the joint statement. Canada's former ambassador to Israel says there's one country that holds the most sway, the U.S., which is the biggest supplier of weapons to Israel.
You're going to see the most and the fastest activity on the part of Israel if Donald Trump himself says enough is enough.
Carney is preparing to host the leaders of the UK, France, and the US next month at the G7. The joint statement is another sign that Canada is trying to strengthen ties with allies across the Atlantic as it faces challenges from its closest neighbor. Donna?
All right, Turia Isri in Montreal, thank you. The American president has announced plans for a new missile defense system he calls the Golden Dome. Donald Trump says it will cost $175 billion and will be completed by the end of his term. And he says Canada wants to be covered by the defense shield.
Canada has called us and they want to be a part of it. So we'll be talking to them. They want to have protection also. So as usual, we help Canada do the best we can.
A spokesman from the Prime Minister's office says Mark Carney has had wide-ranging and constructive discussions with the U.S., including about strengthening NORAD and initiatives such as the Golden Dome. The European Union and the UK have announced new sanctions on Russia a day after a phone call between the Russian President Vladimir Putin and the US President produced no ceasefire. The sanctions target Moscow's so-called shadow fleet of oil tankers and financial firms that have helped Russia avoid the impact of other sanctions imposed over the war on Ukraine. Ukraine calls it a step in the right direction, but wants to see more support from the U.S. And today, the American Secretary of State pushed back at accusations Russia's president is playing for time and stalling peace talks with Ukraine. Marco Rubio faced an intense Senate hearing, Democrats suggesting Vladimir Putin is playing Trump like a fiddle.
I disagree with this playing with a fiddle analogy, because the truth of the matter is when Vladimir Putin woke up this morning, he had the same set of sanctions on him that he's always had since the beginning of this conflict, and Ukraine was still getting armaments and shipments.
Rubio says the U.S. president is just trying to end a bloody and costly war that nobody can win. He says if you start threatening sanctions, the Russians will stop talking. The Canadian government says it plans to call out Russia at the G7 finance ministers meeting. It got underway in Banff, Alberta today. Canada's finance minister says he plans to make it clear Canada stands behind Ukraine and is looking at ways to assist with its reconstruction.
Ukraine is looking to Canada. There's a moral imperative to help our Ukrainian friends who have fought for democracy, but at the same time, there's a lot that Canada can offer when it comes to energy, when it comes to oil and gas, when it comes to infrastructure.
François-Philippe Champagne met with Ukraine's finance minister today. The three-day meeting of finance ministers is a precursor to the G7 Leaders Summit in Kananaskis in June, which is expected to largely focus on trying to de-escalate the global trade war launched by President Trump. There is a new snapshot of Canada's economy. Inflation cooled in April. With the consumer carbon tax gone, last month's inflation rate dropped to 1.7%, down from 2.3% in March. Though, as Heather Yourex-West explains, outside of gas prices, U.S. tariffs mean the cost of other goods is still on the rise.
Filling the tank in April was a welcome change.
I think last time was $117.9. So I'm happy about that.
The end of the consumer carbon tax and a drop in the global price of oil saw Canada's inflation rate cool last month, even as U.S. tariffs started to take a toll.
If you look at some of the underlying inflation pressures, they're still there. Core inflation, which the Bank of Canada looks at closely, is running closer to 3%.
While gas prices were down more than 18% year over year, food prices were up 3.8%. cutting sharply into a household's bottom line.
Especially with the dailies, like milk and bread and eggs, just anything dailies shouldn't be so stretching on the budget.
No vacations, saving, being very frugal. We all have to be, right?
Because the future right now is pretty unclear.
The Bank of Canada is in a tough situation right now because inflation is kind of trending towards the top end of the range that it wants to be, but growth, largely speaking, across the country is quite weak.
The U.S. tariffs have already cost the Canadian economy jobs, but with these inflation numbers, the likeliness of an interest rate cut on June 4th has decreased.
What we feel like we're likely going to see out of the Bank of Canada in June is more the wait and see. They're going to look to see what the tariff impacts are going to be, and then maybe make a cut in July.
With hope that a trade deal can be struck with the U.S. soon, before tariffs push prices up even more. Heather, Yourex-West, Global News, Calgary.
There is another strike looming at Canada Post. The union representing 55,000 workers says its members are ready to walk off the job Friday morning. The last strike was just 6 months ago, and Canada Post warns the threat now is existential. Heidi Petracek explains what's at stake.
Gift store owner Tammy Flynn used to use Canada Post for her retail sales until last November,
when the labor disputes started happening.
So she switched to a private courier company and has stuck with it ever since.
Because of all the labor disruptions that are coming up.
So right now, our advice to small business owners is stop using the mail. Like, we cannot rely on Canada Post at this stage.
The corporation refused to bargain in good faith.
Workers were off the job for 32 days late last year after negotiations with the Crown Corporation stalled just as the busy holiday season hit. Public pressure and a request from the federal minister led the Labor Relations Board to order employees back to work, extending their collective agreement until this Thursday. As that deadline now looms, the union has given notice it could walk out again Friday.
And the problem with it right now is Canada Post is bleeding money. It's lost $3 billion in the last 4 to 5 years.
And as many Canadians increasingly turn to other options, the public postal service continues to lose financial ground.
They want to match up with the UPS of the world, certainly the Amazons of the world. They've got to look at Saturday and Sunday delivery, and which increases your costs.
Late last week, an Industrial Inquiry Commission recommended hiring more part-time workers and abandoning all door-to-door residential deliveries as ways to help save the service.
Canada Post is facing an existential crisis. The financial challenges are real.
But we prefer that more focus be put on keeping the full-time jobs.
As for whether Ottawa will again intervene, the new minister in charge, Patty Hajdu, posted online Friday, "It's time for everyone to put aside their differences." A sentiment echoed on the street today.
I don't think the Government of Canada has a lot more to give them.
I know a lot of folks who rely on it for lots of reasons, so yeah, I hope they work it out.
With time ticking again, not only on possible job action, but perhaps the future of the Postal Service too. Heidi Petracek, Global News, Halifax.
The latest testimony at the Hockey Canada sex assault trial. Coming up, what two former teammates of the accused had to say. The World Junior Hockey trial is underway again. It was the first full day of testimony, now being heard by judge alone. All of the accused were members of Canada's 2018 World Junior Hockey team. Today, two former teammates took the stand. Nathaniel Dove was in court and a warning some of the content is graphic.
Donna, it was a more restrained day in court Tuesday as the World Juniors sex assault trial resumed. The lawyers didn't draw as much attention as they made one point or another, like they did when the jury was there, and that's with two former teammates of the accused testifying. Dylan Dubé, Carter Hart, Alex Fermenton, Michael McLeod, and Cal Foote returning to court after the long weekend. A woman known as EM accused all of them of having non-consensual group sex with her. They have all pleaded not guilty. Tyler Steenbergen and Brett Howden were not charged, but say they were in the room with the five accused and complainant. The Crown asked Steenbergen to clarify what exactly he remembers about the conversations between the accused and complainant before McLeod and Hart received oral sex. Hear any words exchanged between them in the immediate lead-up, a Crown attorney asked. Steenbergen said, "I don't remember any exact words, no." Asked to clarify why he thought EM wanted to be engaging in oral sex, Steenburgen said that's how it all started. She was on the floor masturbating and asking guys to come and F her. So then it just made it seem like she was into it the whole time. It didn't seem like I wasn't worried about her in any way. Howden testified he recalls EM initiating sex, but otherwise rarely answered a question without saying he couldn't recall. The Crown asked, "What can you tell us about her state of dress when she came out of the bathroom?" Others have testified EM was naked. Howden said he doesn't remember. His response was the same when asked about her state of dress when performing oral sex on Hart. Again, others testified that she was naked. Howden said he didn't remember. Howden also testified that he had calls with Foote and Dubé before speaking to Hockey Canada, and that they both asked him to leave their names out of things. Howden then testified that he can't remember any more details about the calls. Donna?
All right, Nathaniel Dove in London, Ontario, thanks. A man who helped smuggle thousands of people from North Africa to Europe has been sentenced to 25 years in jail in the UK. The Egyptian man was part of an organized crime group that moved nearly 4,000 migrants from Africa to Italy between October 2022 and June 2023. He played a key role in the gang that advertised crossings on Facebook and charged people an average of $7,000 each to make the dangerous trip. The judge says he ruthlessly and cynically exploited desperate people to make money. Next, the King and Queen attend a royal celebration for Canada ahead of a symbolic visit. Canada House in London had some special visitors today. King Charles and Queen Camilla stopped by to help celebrate 100 years of the Canadian High Commission in the British capital. And it won't be long before they fly to Ottawa for the opening of Parliament. As Redmond Shannon reports, the trip is being seen as a symbolic show of support for Canadian sovereignty.
100 years after his great-grandfather George V opened Canada House, King Charles and Queen Camilla arrived to mark its centenary. Canada's High Commissioner Ralph Goodale giving the monarch a tour of national parks and landmarks on a new map installation stretching across the mission floor. Before presenting the royals with a ceremonial key to the building, designed by a Tsimshian artist from northern BC. This visit to Canada House comes just days before the King and Queen head to Canada for the opening of Parliament. It will be Charles' 20th visit to Canada, but his first as king.
Consultations with native groups are continuing,
as he becomes the first monarch to give a throne speech since his mother nearly 50 years ago, to be delivered against the backdrop of US threats against Canada's sovereignty.
It reinforces the message that Canada is, as our anthem states, the true north, strong and free.
In March, Charles planted a maple tree at Buckingham Palace. Despite his subtle shows of solidarity with Canada, Charles will also soon host US President Donald Trump for a state visit. Last week, Prime Minister Mark Carney told Sky News that Canadians...
They weren't impressed by that.
There's a duty for the head of state, so it goes with the role.
Political researcher Mark Bannister says Charles has to balance being head of state of different countries with conflicting priorities.
We are in unprecedented times, so and this is quite a challenging position for the monarch to be in.
The traditionally apolitical role of king now drawn into Donald Trump's political drama. Redmond Shannon, Global News, London.
I wanted women's hockey to succeed, and I wanted it to succeed in Ottawa. It looks like it's happened.
Lots of excitement in Ottawa tonight as the puck drops for the Professional Women's Hockey League Finals. The defending Walter Cup champions, Minnesota Frost, are taking on the Ottawa Charge in the first game of a best-of-5 series.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Next, farewell to the friend at the end of the bar. He was the guy who bellied up to the bar in Cheers and who everyone wanted to have a beer with. The actor who played Norm in the hit series has died at the age of 76. George Wendt played the kind of character who everyone could relate to. But he also crafted a stage career well after he left that seat at the bar in Cheers. Eric Sorensen looks back on his life.
Sometimes you want
everybody knows your name.
No one typified that sentiment better than Norm Peterson, the character on Cheers. Every time he walked in,
Afternoon, everybody.
the regulars would call out his name.
How you doing, Norm? Cut the small talk and give me a beer.
For George Wendt, it was a simple part, just a guy who wanted a beer at the end of the day.
I just have a little problem with balls hit directly at me. I think it's the sun, or that I can't bend over.
The only original Cheers characters who were customers, Wendt and John Ratzenberger, got to make wisecracks for a living. They didn't know each other till they got the parts of Norm and Cliff.
Conversely, if you've not led a good life, you come back in a more, lonely condition.
Last time out, I must have made a real ass out of myself.
The chemistry was just a function of mutual respect. We could make each other laugh.
So we did just what we're doing now. That's what we did for work.
It's a good gig. Oh my God.
Yeah.
The best gig in Hollywood.
Wendt was nominated for 6 Emmys playing Norm. He also had other credits in many programs. He played Willie Loman in Death of a Salesman on stage in the Drayton Festival north of Waterloo. But often Wendt's roles were not so different from that of Norm.
Welcome to another edition of Bill Swirsky's Superfan.
Including his turn on Saturday Night Live as fans of
The Bears. The Bears.
Cheers was a beloved cast of characters, and George Wendt was just one. Not the best-known celebrity in Hollywood, but as Norm, everybody knew his name. Eric Sorensen, Global News, Toronto.
It was a good gig. That is Global National for this Tuesday. I'm Donna Friesen. Tonight's Air Canada showcases Winnipeg, Thunder Bay, Ontario, and Victoria, BC. Keep them coming. Send your pictures of Canadian pride to Global National at globalnews.ca. And thanks for watching. Hope to see you here again tomorrow. Bye-bye.